Hello, I'm going to give you an instructional demonstration of how to use this household expenditure sheet. This sheet was developed for a household where there are two people who are contributing different amounts towards the household income. This was born out of experiences that my husband and I have with our own household budgeting, and I hope that you will find it very useful as well. So when you open the budget sheet for the first time, what you'll see is that on the top left, there is a section of cells with different colors. These cells include a list of instructions. Just follow them and you will be fine. In the spreadsheet, there's a lot of references. So that means that when you update one cell, then other cells will also update. So you will see that this will happen as you make changes. That is normal. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll start with step one, which is where we put in the individual's names of the people who live in the household. So in this instance, let's just call these people Lisa and John. And then what we're going to do is for the month of January, we're going to include Lisa and John's respective salaries. So let's pretend that Lisa earns 10,000 Rand a month. And let's pretend that John earns 20,000 Rand in the month. You'll see that there's a whole bunch of other sections for the remaining months in the year. You don't need to update them now. I would update them as you go through the year because you might find that the salaries are going to change. Maybe there's a bonus or an increase or someone changes jobs. So don't worry about that yet. Then if you scroll down, you'll see that there's a section called proportional costs. These are budget categories in your household where the cost of the category or the value of the category is shared proportionally between both people. So what this means is that both people don't contribute equally to that category, or they're not responsible equally for that category, but instead they cover the proportional cost based on how much their salary contributes to the overall household salary or income. And then if you scroll down to the bottom, there's another section that's called equal costs. So this section is one where the two parties are equally responsible for a particular budget category. Not all households will have a category like that. We have a category like that because we own our property 50-50, and as a consequence we pay the same amounts, so equal amounts towards our mortgage or bond payment every month. But maybe you don't have something like that. You can add different categories that are perhaps relevant to you in this section. Now, let's move on to the next section. So after we've developed our categories, we can go to the first month, which is January 2025, and we'll start budgeting. So this section is split into three different blocks. So the first one is called the proportional household expenses total, and in this section both parties will list how much money they contributed towards those particular expenses. The second step is the equal household expenses total. This is a list of how much money each party's paid for, contributed towards the expenses that should be split 50-50. And then we've got these blocks on the far right, which will update and will tally how much money each party spent on the different sections. So I'll take you through this step by step. So let's say in the beginning of the month, Lisa is busy working on her budget and she tallies out how much she spent on groceries in the month. And in this month, she spent 2,500 Rand. She paid for the cleaning service as well. Let's say she spent 500 Rand on that. She paid for security that came off her bank account. She paid for the garden service. She paid 50 Rand towards electricity and water. And she didn't spend on any of these other items for the sake of making things simple. Then in terms of the other big expenses that they share 50-50, nothing else came off her bank account. So John is going to be paying for most of these values, but she didn't pay for anything, even though she is going to be contributing overall at the end of the month. Then once she's finished doing step 1 and step 2, she can see, okay, so for the proportional expenses, what she paid was 3,400 Rand. For the 50-50, she didn't pay anything as we saw, and then she lists whether or not she owes John any money or whether John owes her anything. So in this instance, let's say that John owes Lisa because she took them out for a date night and John promised that he would pay, but he forgot his wallet at home. So John actually owes Lisa 500 Rand. Okay. All right. And don't worry about this bottom block. We'll get to it. And because Lisa has done everything that she needs to do, she will now click on this little button over here because she has updated the worksheet. All right. And we can say yes. Now it's John's turn. So John will now update his section of the sheet. So it turns out that in the month of January, John did do a little bit of grocery shopping. He spent 500 Rand. He spent 250 Rand on electricity. He spent 250 Rand on water. And he was primarily responsible for the fuel. So he spent 1,000 Rand on petrol that month. And then for the other categories, which is the 50/50 one, the medical aid or the medical insurance comes off John's account. So let's say that's 2,500 Rand, and the bond payment comes off his account as well. And let's say that's 12,000 Rand. All right, we scroll to the right now, and let's go through the values. So in terms of this particular household, in total, this household's income is 30,000 Rand, and Lisa contributes a third of that amount, and John contributes more. He contributes 66% or two-thirds. So based on the proportional contribution towards the salary, what actually should have happened is that if you look at how much money was spent overall on the proportional expenses, she paid for the majority of those proportional expenses, but she actually should have paid less. She should have only have paid 1,800, but she actually spent 3,400. And if we look at John, for example, John spent 2,000 Rand, but he actually should have spent 3,600 Rand of the total proportional household expenses. So in this instance, Lisa carried more of the proportional expenses than John did. Then if we look at the 50/50 expenses, what we see is that for the total 50/50 expenses, John actually contributed for almost all of them. And what should have happened, or actually he contributed for all of them, is that they should have both equally contributed to that. So John overspent by 7,250. That's because he's covering Lisa's section of this, and Lisa actually still has to contribute 7,250 Rand. And then in terms of the step 3, Lisa doesn't owe John anything. It's not like she bought him something, maybe like a nice book or something. The only amount here that's owed is that John owes Lisa. So using these values over here, we can then see who owes who what. So in this instance, what we do is we look at the totals for the proportional, for the equal expenses, and who owes who what. And we see that overall the value, the decided value is that Lisa owes John, and the amount that she owes John is 5,150 Rand. And so, and John, on the other hand, doesn't owe Lisa anything. So at the end of the month, once both parties have updated the spreadsheet, they'll go back to the top of the spreadsheet over here. Lisa has already updated it, and now John would have to update it as well, so he would say yes. And as soon as he does that, what we see is that the sheet status changes from incomplete to complete. And it's at this point that now both parties know how much money is owed to whom. And so we see that Lisa owes John, and how much does she owe him? Well, she owes him 5,150 Rand. And so Lisa's doing her budget, and she then decides, well, she doesn't decide, well, she does decide to pay the 5,150 to John, and that will be paid on the 11th of November 2024. And now you'll see that the status of the worksheet is updated again to complete, and this is now a completed month of budgeting. And so this whole exercise will then repeat in February and in March and so forth, and we go through it again. After you've updated the spreadsheet, you can go back to the reference sheet, and now what you'll see is the values for your different subcategories are tallied up and included in this table. And if you move to the right, you'll see what the average, what the min, and what the max is for those categories. This can be very useful for you to get a sense of the overall trend that you are spending on particular budget categories throughout the year, so that you have an idea of whether you're under or overspending. And it also just helps you stay on top of your finances. So I hope that you found this very useful, and good luck. Enjoy it.